it's Cerise. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you're having a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening. And if you're not, make sure you remind yourself that everything is temporary. Speaking of temporary, wow, the story that I'm going to share with you guys today from Storytime is about a guy who was in an almost permanent situation with a wife that he hated. Now, I don't use that word hate very softly. It's not a word that is in my vocabulary very often at all. So when I use it, it is because I want to describe a situation that is very, very strong. And this situation was just, I don't know if it's backwards, but this man wanted to see his wife rest in pain and not rest in peace. It was a long time awaiting for him. Okay, so, which didn't make it so temporary. All right, so let's pick a name for him. Felice. Felice is happy in Spanish. So, Felice, oh my gosh, he's Dominican, a Dominican man, and he sent me this story. And he sent me this story just because he said to me, you know what? The gringos and the gringas, the foreigners, are very much loved in this country. They are very loved in the Dominican Republic and appreciated because approximately 30% of the economy is based upon tourism. So when us expats are here and when tourists come for whether it's a short-term or long-term vacation, we are treated like family, a lot of us. Of course, anywhere around the world, there's always going to be that one. But overall, the Dominican Republic is a place where you can come here and learn to live and laugh and just relax for the rest of your life in a totally different pace and in a totally different way. So, Felice wanted me to tell this story, but he wanted me to say like all that first. He wanted me to say first how important everyone is. And he said, this is nothing against all gringos or gringas. The story was just against this one woman. And furthermore, he works with a lot of foreigners right now. He's never told this story to anybody except for me. He says he trusts me and that I'm not going to say anything to anyone, and I wouldn't. Everything is confidential. I don't share any photos or videos that you guys send to me. And they're just for my own personal use to give me a backdrop on the story more. So anyway, Felice. Let's do the backdrop on Felice. Felice was 5 years old when he met his wife that he wanted to see rest in pain. All right. When he met her, he was 5, but she was 35. Okay. You probably feel where I'm getting with this story right now if you know. How some things are ran here sometimes with some of the female foreigners and the young men. And if you don't know, you will know. And if you don't know, you probably could imagine. So she wasn't looking at him when he was 5 years old. She didn't even know that he existed. But he knew she existed, and he knew he had to be quiet whenever she was around. Let me tell you why. I'll give the backdrop first on her, and then I'll give you the backdrop on Felice. Okay, so the woman, 35 years old, single woman, on the rough side. He said her nails were always dirty underneath and very, very short. She was always, trying to, she was always in the garden, so her nails were always dirty because of probably soil and dirt. And she was a rough woman. She was always fixing motors and cars and everything. He said she didn't have any children. She didn't have a husband, never had any friends. All she had was the staff on her property. Her property was very huge, and she bought it in the north coast of the Dominican Republic, just outside of the beach town that I'm located in right now. The beach town that I'm located in right now is called Cabarete. Well, you know what? Let me just get to where I'm going. Oh my gosh. So anyway, Cabarete. Where they were located was Sabaneta. Okay, Sabaneta is just outside of Cabarete. So now, they're in Cabarete. I mean, sorry, they're in Sabaneta, and this woman, she buys a beautiful piece of land, and at the back of the piece of land, that's where she had her staff quarters. Now, it was kind of, Felice told me, like under trees, and it was just out of the way where she would never ever see it. And she had them built out of zinc and wood, so zinc roofs and wood walls. And she had them built like cottage style, and she just had them built with trees off the lot itself, off her property itself. Her property was huge, and that was it. And she hired somebody named Rosada, who was Felice's mother. And Rosada at the time was 25, and she had Felice when she was 20. And well, what happened over the years, she broke up with Felice's father. And the reason why, let's give this woman, this foreigner woman, a name, first of all. Let's give her the name Dueña. Dueña means owner, and female owner. Okay, so Dueña, she was the owner of the estate, all the property, and she would only be in the Dominican Republic here for 6 months out of the year. 6 months. That's it. After 6 months, she was right back in Europe. Felice asked me to not say exactly where she was from. He doesn't want anyone to put two and two together with this story. So now she was in back and forth. And when she hired Rosada, it was so Rosada could take care of the estate, hire a lot of good people. She knew Rosada came highly recommended to her because Rosada was young and she was able to get things done really quickly. And that was it. And funny enough, when Dueña asked in the local town of Sabaneta, in the colmado, in the corner store, she asked, does anyone know a woman that can cook, clean, and monitor staff? And the person that she asked was Rosada's father. Rosada's father was the owner of the colmado. Dueña didn't even know this. She didn't even care. She didn't even ask questions. And he said, yes, I know somebody. I will send her to your estate later. And that's exactly what happened. Rosada went up there, and Rosada never, ever left. And she worked for Dueña for 10 years. So when Felice was 15 years old, that is when the trouble really started to happen. Now, this woman would go back and forth from Europe, back and forth to Europe, 6 months on, 6 months off, 6 months on, and on. And she didn't even know Felice existed. She didn't even know who her staff were. She just knew Rosada. And that's all she wanted to know. She didn't speak to anyone else, but she just wanted her lawn looking good all the time when she arrived. She didn't want one speck of dust in the house when she arrived. She wanted it to be exactly the way she left it. If the toothbrush was a certain way, she wanted her toothbrush capped, right? But in the exact same way when she got back. And she respected Rosada. And she knew Rosada and expected, not only respected, but she expected Rosada to have everything the exact same way. The woman, needless to say, had a little bit more than OCD. So now Rosada didn't have an issue with any of that. She was getting paid very well. And not only that, she was able to hire all her family as staff. So her and all her family were on the grounds. Now, this woman was not totally mean and gruff. She just had her own little way of doing things, and she paid them well, fair wages, and she also paid for their food and didn't make them pay for room and board. In the staff quarters, all the way in the back of the property, they had homes, Felice told me, very similar to what they would have outside of the estate, where they would have to pay for water, or like the running of the land and stuff like that. There, they didn't have to pay for anything. And he said there were 6 homes. And his aunt lived in one, and his uncle lived in another one. And they were all working for that one woman, and 6 families. So now, let's fast forward. When he was 15, he also started to work, and he would, get the eggs and everything from the chickens. They had like a whole little chicken farm there, all boarded up, pretty looking. I saw photos of it all. It was actually really nice the way they had designed it. And the Dominicans designed it, not her. But she was really happy with it. And so that's what they did for her all the time. They would just increasing and building her land, increasing her land, and they were selling the eggs into the city. And, they weren't taking advantage of her giving free food or anything. And she would always say, how come the budget is so taken care of so well? And then Rosada would say, well, we are bartering a lot of stuff because, we're taking your eggs and we're doing different things with them. And most of the people who live here on their spare time, they all have a talent as well. And the resources here in the villa we can use, like when they chop down the hair from the banana tree or whatever, from the coconut tree, they can use that, and then they take husks and they make boats, and they use it's just so many beautiful things that they create. And so they were using the resources of the property to make creative things, sell them in town and everything like that. And so Dueña was really pleased with Rosada. And Dueña never had to talk to Rosada about a thing. And so now when Felice was 15, as I said, that's when things started to go crazy. Now what happened was there was a gringo going through town. And as you would have it, cliche, his motorcycle, it ran out of gas. So he thought. But it wasn't gas. It was just the whole entire bike itself. Let's call this guy Mackenzie. So he was he's a Bible missionary, a Christian missionary, and he was up in that area to share the Bible. He spoke perfect Spanish. So, by the way, Dueña did not speak Spanish at all. Dueña spoke her language, which Rosada spoke, and she spoke no English, only her language. So Rosada was very, very necessary for her. And I'm not going to say what the language was, but that's just because Felice asked me not to. So now, fast forward again, the foreigner and Rosada end up falling in love. Now, they fall in love and she gets pregnant really, really quickly. And then, so now Dueña, she's back home. When Dueña gets back to back here to the Dominican Republic, it was on an unexpected trip. She just happened to come back. And at this time, Rosada's belly was big. Rosada knew that Rosada was ready. She was ready to pop. But what happened was, because Dueña came back early, Dueña saw her. But if Dueña came back when she was expected, the baby would have been about 3 months old. And, like the baby would have, so the baby would have been about 2 months old. And she thought she was timing it good. That's exactly what she thought she was doing. Plus, she wanted to have another child. Felice said he can remember his mom and Mackenzie, Rosada and Mackenzie, planning the baby. And they were planning it around the woman coming back, Dueña coming back. She knew Dueña wouldn't like it, but they were planning around it. And the plans were that she would just have the baby just before Dueña came back. She would have a good month with the baby, and everyone else would take care of the chores in the house and make sure everything was going right. And then by the time Dueña came back, Rosada would be back up on her feet, and her husband would take care of the baby. By the way, her husband, Mackenzie and her fell in love. They got married and everything like that, but very quickly too. But by the way, Mackenzie could also build a house from the bottom up. So he reconditioned all of the staff houses and everything. He took such good care of Felice. Felice was 15, so he really needed a role model at that time too. And so everyone was really happy and at peace. Everyone knew just not to tell Dueña, but Dueña showed up unexpectedly. And when Dueña showed up, she looked at Rosada right away and she said, "Please tell me you are just fat, please." And Rosada played it off, and she said no, that she was pregnant, and she's due any day now. And Dueña said, okay, well, you have to go. You have to go. And you'll get your severance package. You and whoever else is here, they have to go. And Rosada said to her, no. You have it mistaken. I can still take care of your place. My husband is here. And she's like, your husband? What do you got going on here on my estate? What do you have going on my property? You have your whole house here, all your family and everything. Now, she knew this before. Dueña knew this before. She just didn't know about, Mackenzie. But she didn't care to know. She never asked questions. She didn't ever ask to approve anything or anything. She just, was always really pleased at how things were ran so smoothly and how Rosada was taking care of things. And then, when Dueña said to her, no, when you were hired for the grounds. You didn't have any children. There was no talk about children. And she said, when Dueña had hired her, she already had a kid. And she just looked at Dueña like, are you crazy? And Felice can remember just standing there and looking at Dueña, and Dueña didn't even see him, didn't even acknowledge him. Dueña said, oh, you're lying. Where was your kid all this time? Look, just get up and you got to go. So everyone, they didn't like it. And she didn't know what to do, really. She just kept on crying. Rosada. And she ran back to, their humble home. And she tried to pack up a few things. She didn't know where to start. Felice said he can remember his mom saying, where do I start? And she was holding her hands, and then she held her belly, and then her water broke, and she ran out of the house to go get Mackenzie. Mackenzie was out. He wasn't in the house at the time. He was out of the house. Perhaps he was trying to speak to Dueña, but she ran towards him. She fell, she tripped, and she fell right over one of the little cliffs. Now, the property was so large that there was a river on it as well. And that is where she had tripped. She just slid right down. She was trying to take a shortcut. Instead of taking the way that she should have taken it, she just slipped and she fell. She banged her head. Ooh, that was a big truck going by. She banged her head. And when she banged her head, she went into a coma. And she never awoken from the coma, and they had to terminate her pregnancy. The baby passed on. It was just a sad situation. And when Dueña saw what happened, they went and they got Dueña from the front. Felice remembers that the watchman went and got Dueña from the front of the building area. That's what he called it, the front of the building area. And Dueña went back, and she looked down the hill, and she said, oh, I guess she won't be getting her severance check. And she walked away. Her severance money, right? Because here you get severance money when you've worked for a while. And she would have gotten a nice severance check. And that severance check would have helped her do exactly what Felice was saying. Continue with the business, because her husband was a builder, and they were running a little small building company, like a little small supply and builder company in Sabaneta. So they were ready to invest more into it, but they had no reason to leave their jobs because they were cool working for Dueña. But now this was a moment where, they could have taken their severance check and that was it. But Felice didn't fight for the severance check. Felice was 15 years old. He didn't fight for the severance check. He didn't know what his rights were. Mackenzie took good care of Felice. They didn't have to get any money. Mackenzie continued with the business, and he started to build. And he was building and making good money. And then eventually he took Felice with him back to America. Him and Felice went back to America. Felice went to college in America, and he did very, very well for himself, like just with education. But he could never stop thinking about Dueña. And he really wanted to get her back. He really wanted revenge. and he went to school to make his mom happy. He got straight A's to make his mom happy. He stayed out of trouble to make his mom happy. Everything was for his mom, but he never felt like he ever could repay her back, just by getting good grades. That's normal. Like, he felt like the things that he was doing with his life is just what you do anyway. So for him, it was very difficult to feel like there could be any type of a real connection of revenge, unless he got right into the nitty gritty of this woman and watch her die, just like he watched his mom die. He blamed the death on this woman, clearly. So now he leaves America and he comes here. The father is doing very well. Mackenzie, his stepdad's doing very, very well. The business here is doing very well. They franchised out. They partnered with someone, and he was a secret partner now. All he had to do was just stay in America. He remarried. He met an American woman, and he remarried, and he was doing very well. Like I said, he raised Felice very, very well as well. He did everything he could do. When Felice was a man and he was finished college, he came back to the Dominican Republic, and he had his own money because he also worked. He also worked after school for many years, and like little part-time jobs. And his dad also had a good little fund for him as well. His dad set him up with some good money, and everything was going well. And that's why he came back to the Dominican Republic. When he did, he came back undercover, and he went directly to Dueña's property. The property was in shambles, and immediately he knew that she was going to need his help. He knew why it was in shambles, because nobody could take care of that property the way his mother did, and what she did to his mother was straight evil. And he knew that that woman was suffering from karma, but he didn't care. He said he was going to go in there and help her out. That was his excuse to get close to her. And then he did. He went in there and he said to himself, how is he going to get her attention? And she was there. He heard from some family in his family in the town, as his family still lived there, and he heard from his family in the town that she still lived there, but she didn't trust anyone that would go and work for her. She'd kick them out. And they thought she was going senile, and they also felt like she was, just lonely up there. Only motor controls would go up there to deliver water and deliver food, and she never was the same. And so what did he do? He went and he knocked on her door. The gate was open. He said the gate was open. It was broken. And he knew the gate very well. And he remembered. He said he hadn't been there for like 10 years. Oh, no, less than that. Like he said, almost a decade. So I don't know if almost a decade is 8 years to him, because 10 years is a decade, right? So I don't know if that's 8 years to him or 9 years. So I don't want to say 10 years or 9 or 8. I'll just say what he said. He was there for almost a decade in America, but when he got back to here to the Dominican Republic, he knew everything about that field. He remembered everything, and he said everything was grown over, things were rusted and everything. And so anyway, he opened up the gate. It was broken. He didn't have to do much. He just slid it, and he went and he knocked on the front door, and she opened it. And right away, she didn't even ask who was there or anything. She just opened it. And she said yes. And he said she startled him, but it was like she was desperate. Like she didn't even care. Like, like if it was someone there to hurt her or take her life. And he said that she probably knew there was no one that was going to try to rape her. Because he said she was so dirty and greasy looking. Her hair was greasy. Her lips and face and nails and skin and everything just looked so dry and old. And he said she looked way older than she should have been. And so Now at this time, she's 55, about 55, because remember, when he met her, she was 35. His mom worked there for 10 years, and then he took off to America for about 10 years. So it could be a little over 20 years, but it wouldn't be by much. And if she's 35, then now she's 55. Okay. And so now he's looking at her, and he's just like, wow, she looked like she was 70. And he said to me, you know what, Cerise, I swear to you, this woman, she had a hate in her eyes and a hue of evil around her that I don't know what she did in her past life, or I don't know what her parents did to her, or whoever she was raised with, but she was a pained person, pained. And I said to him, so anyway, I don't want to get ahead of myself, because I ended up saying to him, why did you make her die in pain? Like, but I'll get to my opinion in a minute. You guys know how I do it. I always give my opinion at the end of the story, like Jerry Springer, the final thought. And then I ask you for yours. But anyway, so he said the look on her face was just so awful. And he said to her, and she's like, what? And he's like, oh, and another thing. During those years, he learned her language in America. He made sure he took studies in her language when he went to school. So there you go. But by this time, she already knew Spanish. And she said, like, what? ¿Qué? When she opened the door, ¿Qué? ¿Qué tú quieres? Yeah, what do you want? And he looked at her and he's like, and then he just spoke Spanish to her. And he said, okay, I'm looking at your lawn right now, and I'm just new into town. And, I used to live in Dominican Republic when I was a kid, but I moved to America for a long time. I speak English. And he told her her language. And then he said, in Spanish and a little bit of French. I can be a help around the yard for you. I can clean up. I can get this place looking really good. The way I can make this place look good, it probably never looked that good before. And she was like, oh, you have no clue. She didn't even know who he was, right? And she looked at him. She's like, oh, you have no clue. And he's like, what do you mean? And she said, no, this place was once very beautiful. And he's like, give me a chance to make it beautiful again. She was like, oh, I don't know. What do you need for that? And he said, just let me get a crew of 5 people, and we will make this place look good. And she said, all right, no problem. Like, she's like, how much? Well, she obviously knew the costs of how much stuff would cost, and he knew that. So he said to me that when she asked, like, cuánto cuesta, how much, he knew to give her a proper price and not like what they call gringa or foreigner price. And she was like, all right, yep. She knew how much it would cost, but she just didn't trust anyone. She would have had her own people, but she kept kicking them all out because they weren't making her as happy as Rosada made her. Now remember, Rosada is Felice's mother. So Felice was raised for 10 years on that property. He knew the ins and the outs and how to do everything. If he wasn't working with his mom one day in the house, he was working with his uncle in the yard, or he was working with his aunt in the field, in the garden. Like, there was so much that he was doing, and he learned everything. And so said, so done. This man went on and on like a racehorse from morning, noon to night. And she watched him and watched him and watched him, and to the point where she started to bring him food and water. And he was like, oh, okay, this woman actually does have a heart. She started to bring him food and water to the field. And, she'd say, if you want, you can come in and take a break, or, and he would tell her, no, it's all right. And then she said to him one day, she said, there's some shacks out back. If you and your men want to sleep here, I don't know where you go at night, but if you guys want to sleep here, it's okay. It's okay with me. I could order up some blankets and get some things delivered here for you guys. I really don't know what's in those shacks, but you might want to go in. Now, this was going to be the first time he was in those shacks, so to speak, but it was his house from when he was a kid, since he was a kid. When they left everything. They never went back to her place. Mackenzie refused to go back. He couldn't. He didn't want to take anything out of the house. And you know what? Duenya didn't take anything out of those shacks either. They were left untouched for 10 years. I got goosebumps. Oh my gosh. Every time I think about that part. And so Felice was able to go into the back where his aunt lived, his uncle lived, those six shacks, not shacks, 6 houses. And he said they were dilapidated. They were broken down, but he was able to collect a few things. And on top of that, what did he do? He called a few people from his dad's franchise here in the Dominican Republic to pick up the pieces and rebuild the houses. This woman, Duenya, was so impressed. And she said, how much? And he actually paid for half of it. She didn't know, right? And she's like, oh my gosh, that's cheap. He told her half the price. And she was like, oh my gosh, that's so cheap. Wow, you're an angel. Where did you come from? Holy, she's just like, wow. And he's like, don't worry about it. He was trying to gain her trust. And eventually he did. He rebuilt everything up. He had her lawn looking exactly like it once was. And she said to him, you were right. It used to look exactly like this. And she pulled out some photos and showed him some paper photos. This was you have to remember now, this was years ago. And so she pulled out some paper photos, photo albums. And her photo albums, there were photos of Rosada and Felice when Felice was younger. This woman, didn't even realize she's taking photos of them at certain times. He said sometimes she would go through personality changes. Once in a while, she would go to the river, as there was a river on the property. I think I said that already. And every Sunday, she would let them have their river party. And it wasn't a deep river, but it was a nice flowing river where they can swim in up to their chest. And it was great. And they would play music and they would cook food, and it was a family gathering, and she didn't mind that. But sometimes she would go to the river and take photos of them, not talk to them or anything during the 10 years. And she would go and take photos. So she had those photos in albums. And she was showing these to Felice, all those memories. And he looked at her and he's thinking in his head, holy smoly macaroni. That was a notification from my phone, guys. It wasn't a doorbell. If you're thinking it's a doorbell, I digress. But it's my other cell phone is connected to my big speaker. Okay, so he was like, wow, looking through the photo albums, and he was so impressed, but he was trying to hold in his excitement. He was looking at photos of his mom when she was younger and when he was younger, and photos of them laughing together in the river and everything. And he was like, wow, he felt he found a gold mine. He felt like his mom gave him that photo album. I got chills again. So goosebumps all over my body. So, what happened was, Duenya, of course, let me just fast forward a little bit. Of course, I could tell you so many details, but Duenya ended up falling in love with Felice, even though she was 30 years older than him. Okay. And she was only 55, right? So that's not very old. And so she ended up falling in love with him, and he just went with the flow, right with her. He went with the flow, and he was like, all right. Now, he didn't fall in love with her. He said to me that it was so hard to be intimate with her because all he could think about was revenge. He felt like this was part of his revenge. The more he slept with her, the more she would fall in love with him. The more she fell in love with him, the more he would be able to control her. And the more he would be able to control her, the more he could take from her and squeeze the life out of her just the way she squeezed the life out of his mother. And he said he started to feel so much at peace, so much at rest. He started to smile a lot more when he was with her, and when he was like spending her money and fooling her heart. And I was like, wow. And then This man was with her for 10 years. He never tried to poison her. He never tried to do anything. He never cheated on her because he was afraid that if she found out, she would leave him. So he never cheated on her. And then one day she got, oh, wait. She took him to Europe with her on a few trips. Not only did she take him to Europe with her, but she signed over her properties into his name, not her name. She signed everything over into his name. And even at the bank and everything, they asked her, why is she doing that? And she said, well, you never know. He may need it more than me one day. At that time, she was sick. He didn't know she was sick. She had 4th level, I think they call it, cancer. There was no way she was going to be able to make it. They gave her 3 months to live. So she took him, like, they went to Europe before that, but on their last trip to Europe, it was just impromptu. And she took him. And, oh, by the way, they got married. They got married in that 10 years too. So they went on the last trip to Europe. They're in Europe, and she signed everything over to his name. Even though they were married, he had full ownership over everything. And they were questioning her in the bank. They were questioning her. Lawyers were questioning her. Nothing. She just said, I want my husband to have everything. He deserves it. And so when they got back to the Dominican Republic, she signed everything here over into his name. And he remembered, he told me this, at this point, he started to feel guilty. And he was like, why is she doing this? And he felt like she was a little crazy. And he felt like he didn't want to get revenge on a crazy woman. So he thought maybe that's why she did what she did to his mom, because she's crazy, you know? And no. So he felt bad, and he sat down with her at the table, and he said to her, listen. And he was ready to leave her. And he said to her, listen, I can't take everything you have. I'm going to leave you. You sign everything back over in your name. I'm good. I have an education. I can go to America. I'm good. Like, I don't have to worry about anything. You keep your stuff. He didn't want a crazy woman coming after him, I guess. I don't know. And I guess he didn't want to have the guilt. You know what I mean? That's guilty. You don't want to take advantage of somebody's mentality. So she said to him at that moment, she said she was sick. And she admitted it to him. And he was like, oh. And then, not mentally, physically. And he was like, oh, gosh, this is good. That's what he said to me. Cerise, at that point, I realized this is good. He said his prayers were coming true. It seemed like this was not going to ever end. He said to me that he only thought it was going to be temporary, but it became so permanent. And he said now the reality of it was coming to an end. And he was 35, going on 36, and he cannot forget the day that she was taking her last breath. A lot of you guys are not going to like this. You're not going to like this. I was like, whoa. All right, this is what he did. She was on, he said he heard the rattle. He did a lot of research on cancer. He did a lot of research on death. He knew what to expect, and he was ready. And when they said that this may be her last day, she wanted to die in the house, in the villa. She wanted to die. Her last request was for him to be by her side. So he was by her side. As she was taking her last breaths, he whispered in her ear, do you remember Rosada? And she blinked her eyes. They had this little thing. You blink once and it's yes. You blink twice and it's no. She blinked her eyes, yes. He said, you killed her. Rosada was my mother. And her eyes opened. They didn't blink at all. And he was happy. He knew, okay, she's about to take her last breath. He leaned in deeper and he said, I never loved you. This was all revenge. And then He felt her shake and rattle, her chest rattled more, and he told her, rest in pain. Boom. She died. She died. Just like that, it was her last breath. Now, that, my friends, for me, hurt my chest when I heard it. It hurt my chest physically, emotionally, hurt my head mentally. I was like, yo, why would you do that? You should have just been, I mean, nothing could replace his mother. So I'm not saying be happy with the material items. You know, I'm a humble person myself. But I mean, just be happy with the fact that, Mackenzie took care of him, took him to America, and that he had at least someone there. You know, the remorse, not the remorse, the revenge that he had in his heart, he should have tried to balance it out a little bit with gratitude and been like, and he should have been like, okay, you know what, his mom has passed on, but he's in America. And I know this is going to sound harsh because nothing can replace a mother. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is we learn to balance things out. When he asked me, when Felice asked me, Cerise, what do you think? I said, I think you should have just been happy with her, with all of her stuff. Like, you should have just been happy and then, you know, donated a little bit to the town and, you know, maybe run for like politics and bring some changes in, or, you know, like do something, like create your business and look at that as getting revenge. You know, the woman had no children, the woman had no family. She was there, she was here in the Dominican Republic, and she, you know, didn't have any friends. She was clearly living a horrible existence already. He said that she didn't even read, she didn't even watch TV. Like, come on, at least read a book, at least watch TV, at least do something. He said all she would do, and he said when he got there, the house was so dirty. He doesn't know what she was doing all those years that she didn't have Rosada there. So that showed that she went through some pain, something, right? And when he got back to her, he relivened her life. He said to me, he said, I made her live for 10 years. I don't feel bad at all, because when I got into her life again as a man, she didn't know who I was. She couldn't care less about my mother, never ever mentioned my mother. After she showed the photos, she showed the photos not because she was trying to show Rosada. She was showing the photos to show him what the land used to look like before him. But she didn't realize that his family was the one keeping the land. Anyway, you know, he said she never spoke about anything or ever felt remorse or anything. And he said he prompted her a few times. He said to her a few times, did you ever have any staff here before? And she said, yeah. But she never said, yeah, I had staff and I really feel bad about one situation. She never said anything. And so that made him even angrier. And I understand that. But, like, take your stuff and run. Like, maybe not be with her on her dying bed. Like, she already signed everything over. She said, get up and go. But I guess, you know, I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's not good either, because she could just take everything back before she dies. And then, you know, here he spent 10 years with her for nothing. I don't know, really, at the end of the day. But I do know, right? I don't know if what he did was wrong or right. All I know at the end of the day, for me and for my home, and for my heart, and for my beliefs, you let someone rest in peace. You learn forgiveness, especially if you spent 10 years getting what you can out of them, and then they sign everything over to you, houses in Europe, and property all through the Dominican Republic, and also the property that his mom loved so much and took care of. Be content, you know? And so anyway, what has he done? He's increased everything that she gave him already by double. He's done really good, building, making the villa an inn. It's an inn now, so it's like a really cool inn. It's like a tropical inn. It's really beautiful. I stayed there for one night, and in the morning they bring coconut water. It's really beautiful, but I'm not going to tell you guys where it's at, so don't let me go too much more into it, because I vowed to him that obviously I wouldn't even do any promotion on the place. He said to me, he's like, Cerise, I love your promotions. I love everything about your channel. I love you and how you treat my country. And he said, but really, seriously, this is such a story that I really want to share with Storytime. He's like, I love Storytime. Out of all your videos, I love Storytime. They touch my heart. And he said, you know what? That I don't need people coming here and promoting. He said, I'm really doing good with promotions myself. So, you know, he said, you don't need to come here and show what I got going on. But eventually he told me if he ever feels good about it, he wants to read the comments on the video. He said, you know what, Cerise, I want to read the comments on the video first anyway, as he knows you guys are going to come at him with your own opinions as well. That's just my opinion. I think, you know what, forgive and let go, but at the same time, how can you forgive someone if your mother is really all you had, right? So I see his point too, but sometimes you gotta not drive the knife in so deep that you affect your own karma, you know, like what he did to her on her deathbed. Oof. But in any case, at the end of the day, we all know that when we pass on, we're in peace no matter what. No one can tell us to rest in pain, because it depends on our own life as we lived it here, and it depends on our own connection with spirituality when we leave. So nobody else has the dominion to tell us how to rest. So at the end of the day, he did what he did and he said what he said, but there's no way that it could have impacted her next life. I believe that. Now, to wrap up on it, I just want to say that he's doing very well with his properties. He's doing very well with his Airbnbs. He's doing very well and he's flourishing. And I wish him the best in that area, because he really talks about his mom a lot, and his mom's real name is not Rosada, but he has named a few of his places, restaurants and boutique hotels around the Dominican Republic island after his mom. He even has a place in Haiti, and he's going to be building a beautiful boutique hotel there. He said to me that Haiti is a lot more beautiful than a lot of us even imagine, and that there's just a lot of negative press that we're all believing. Also, I heard on Russell, on another channel, Russell, you guys probably know Taylor Made Dreams, when he did the marathon, there was a woman, it was a marathon movement where he did 4 hours of different vloggers giving their opinions and their experiences here in the Dominican Republic based upon real estate, relationships, and also just daily life. There was a person on there who was a Haitian woman, and she was originally in America, and then she moved back to Haiti, and she was telling us that the same thing that Felice is saying to me. Haiti is a beautiful, beautiful island with beautiful beaches. So he said that he bought something there as well. But Haiti and the Dominican Republic are all on the same island anyway, right? Hispaniola. So I'm not surprised. But he said he's a Dominican that goes to, well, before everything was locked down, he would go to Haiti all the time to buy supplies. He also has a clothing store, so there's like a trading post, and it's right in a place called Hispaniola, I think. And it's between Dominicans and Haitians. You can go there and you can buy a lot of stuff like that are built in Haiti. Like, you know, apparently there's a lot of knockoff stuff, like in cellular phone products and stuff like that. So cords and adapters and everything like that. So he said that he has property there, and he also has property here, and he's doing very well, and he's branching out, and he's happy, and he feels like for the first time in his life, his mom is resting in peace. So there we go, guys. I'm looking forward to your comments. I love you so much. I thank you so much for joining me, for watching this video, for listening to this story, and also, guys, for subscribing. When you do subscribe, don't forget to hit that bell button. The bell button will notify you whenever I upload a video, whether it's about an apartment, a story time, or if it's just about my daily life. Alrighty, guys, thank you so much again. Big blesses, huge hugs, and loads of love.
Every single day